Hey guys, so today I've got a tutorial and it's all about actually showing you how to make a bubble shield, and a bubble shield you might have seen from Halo 3 or the Halo series or anything like that. And now it's not going to be exactly the same as any of the ones that you've seen, but you know, it'll have a similar effect, and I'm sure that you recognise it because somebody asked me how to do it. So we'll start off that I'm going to show you how to make the actual object in 3ds Max first of all. So you know, I might put these assets up to download if, you know, people need them, but I'll show you quickly first off what we're going to do. So what I'm going to want to do is get a sphere, and I'm just going to draw that out in the workspace in 3ds Max. Then what I'm going to do is just check edged faces so we can see what's going on. We're just going to actually create a hemisphere, so we don't actually want the whole of it, we just want, you know, half of it. So once I've done that, you can see that we've got half of the actual sphere. What I'm going to do is then right click and convert to editable poly, and once I've done this, what I'll be able to do is we can go to the underside, and we're going to need to actually change something to it so we can actually go underneath it and see through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select one of my edges, get a swift loop, and just put a swift loop into the model. Once we've put the actual edge in, what I'll do is I'll select the top edge, bring it really close to the other side, and then I'll select the edges again, hold shift to select, and then I'm just gonna scale it in very slightly, so maybe about this much. And then from here, what we're going to do is I will select all the polygons at the bottom. And what I'll do when I select all the polygons, I'll bevel the way in, so we just bevel in, and until we see a line, we'll go to there, I'll just move it in slightly, and then we'll go up again, then I'll add a plus, we'll go up slightly again. Make sure this just takes a little bit of trial and error really, and then I'll add plus again, come back a little bit, adjust the bevel slightly. It's just so that we're not seeing anything on the outer edge. Press the plus again, come back in, just so we can get a sort of, you know, dome shape like that, so we get an actual inner dome now. Now that's the actual shape that we're looking at to use. So now what we can do is we can go to export, and then if I go to choose my desktop or wherever you want to save it, and I'll save it as bubble shield FBX, because you want to save it as an FBX and then export that out. And once you've done that, we can actually go into Unity. And then once we're in Unity, what I want to do is import a new asset. Then I want to import the bubble shield FBX. So if I import into the scene, it might be quite small. Then what I'll do is I'll just click on the actual asset in the project panel and scale it by 0.1. Still a bit small. 0.2. You know, that might be something that we're looking for. So that's all okay now. Then what I actually want to do is within Unity, I want to actually add the refractive material that I used in another video. So I'll put the package up for download, but what we need to do is select this refractive material, and we can apply it to the dome that we've got here. Now it almost makes it look sort of transparent, like I showed for the crisis bit. But to make it look like a bubble shield, we're going to actually create something in Photoshop. And now it's going to look like this texture here, but I'll quickly show you how you can do it. So what we can do is create a 5x512 new segment in Photoshop. And then what we do is at the shape creation side, if we select polygon tool and we make sure your sides are set to 6, what I'm going to do is actually scale out a sort of 6-sided polygon, and what I'm going to do is double click on the layer, and I'm going to set the color overlay to, you know, a blue, Then I'll set the stroke to white. Oops. Set the stroke to white. And I'll press OK. We'll actually delete this background layer so we can see what we're doing a little bit. And then what you want to do is actually position this polygon sort of just to the edges of your map, essentially. So as we can see in here, you'll notice that I've got a row of particular polygons, and when you put them together, if we press Ctrl J, we can duplicate, and what you can do is then put that next to another one. It's all about getting a sort of visual style that you like. Add another polygon next to another, you know, get it roughly how you want it. Do another, just like that. Then we'll collapse all these layers, and then what we can do is, if you hold shift and select across a few, we can right click and say duplicate layers, and then what we can do is drag them down onto a lower section and do the same until you fill the entirety of your space up with these hexagons. And then we'll just create a new layer at the bottom, and I'll just fill that in with the colour that we've got. So, well, we really want to select the colour that we have here, so if I select that with the colour picker and just paste it in, then what you can do is once it's full up, you can save it out as a PNG, JPEG, PSD, whatever, and then import that into Unity. So I'm not going to save that just for the sake of this. I'll go back into Unity, and you can see that this is my texture here. Now, the material that we had on this object, the refractive material, what we're now going to do is actually add this bubble shield texture to the object. Now, you may need to adjust the tiling a little bit. Mine's 15 and 8, and if you want it to tile properly on the outside, you'll actually have to make it tile within Photoshop, so making it so it'll repeat as many times as you want. But that sort of creates the visual effect of the object. Now, what we're going to do after this is we're going to actually add a physics, add a rigid body, and then I'm going to set it to use gravity and is kinematic, and then add a component, and then add physics again, and then we'll add a box collider, and this is just so it'll sit on the terrain and not fall through, because we want to be able to spawn it and use it like you could in sort of like the Halo games. So you'll notice that it has that sort of similar effect with sort of a spacey, funky effect. Now, make sure your box collider is triggered, because we're going to want to walk through it and stuff like that. Now, the main part of this is going to be creating the script. So we'll create a new JavaScript and call this create shield, and then from there we'll double click and we'll start writing the script. So what I'm going to do is delete those two functions, write a variable player as type transform, then another variable called bubble shield as type game object, then another variable called bubble sound as audio clip. Just need to change that bubble shield to a capital. And then what I'm going to do is create 3 private variables. One private variable called clone bubble as game object, another private variable called can spawn as boolean equal to true, then another private variable called time until next spawn, and set that to as type float. Now we're going to write a function update, so write your function update, add your 2 brackets and then the curly brackets, and say if can spawn, so if can spawn is equal to true, which it is, and input dot get key down in brackets key code dot b, or whatever key you want your bubble, then add 2 brackets at the end, then add 2 new curly brackets, and then we're going to write clone bubble equals instantiate, make sure you spell that correctly, in brackets bubble shield, close the brackets, add a semicolon, and we'll say clone bubble dot transform dot position equals player dot position plus vector 3 in brackets 0 minus 2 0. Now I'll explain this all when I've written it out, and then we're going to write can spawn is equal to false, then time until next spawn is equal to 0.0 with a semicolon. Then I want to say audio dot play one shot open brackets bubble sound, close the brackets, add the semicolon. So what we're doing here is if the object can spawn and we press B, then what object we set here, clone bubble, it'll instantiate the object that we're asking it to make. So what we're going to make is the bubble shield, and then it's going to instantiate that object at the player's position plus, so this vector 3 means it'll add some height to it, or make it lower, or put it to the left, put it to the right, depending on X, Y and Z axis. So here -2 is because my character controller is slightly big. I put it to -2 because if I spawned it with no vector 3, it would spawn sort of over the player, slightly above. So -2, you might need to adjust this, and that's the Y value, and that's how high. So when you press B, you need to make sure that it's, looks like it's on the floor. And then we're going to set can spawn equal to false, because we won't be able to spawn another bubble until the timer runs out, and the timer sets to 0 so we can start it going, and then we'll play the sound effect for it. Now to make this all work, we need to add the timer. So I'm going to say if !can spawn, that means that if we do the opposite of what can spawn equals, at the beginning, which is true, which means it's set to false, then time until next spawn plus equals time dot delta time. So that'll count up. It'll count up from 0 all the way up to whatever we set, and then under here we'll say that if time until next spawn is greater than or equal to, we'll say 7, then we'll say that can spawn is equal to true, that destroy open brackets clone bubble, close brackets and a semicolon, then I'll say audio dot stop. So this means that if it's false, which it is, it'll start the timer. If the timer ever reaches 7, can spawn will then be equal to true, and we can make another bubble. It'll destroy what we had, and it'll stop the sound effect. So in Halo, when you made a bubble shield, it would destroy itself after a period of time. It wouldn't be something that lasted forever. So what we'll do then is save that script, and we'll go into Unity, and then what we want to do is add this to the first person controller. So if I drag the create shield to the first person controller, we'll add our FPS controller as the player. We'll add the sound effect, which I've got from somewhere else. So you will add your sound effect. You can look for your own sound effect if you like. And then we need to actually add a game object, which is the bubble shield. So what I'm actually going to do is create a new prefab. So I'll create a new prefab and call this shield. And then what I'm going to do, this game object that we created, it's got all the elements on, and what we can do from here is if we drag this to shield and we delete this out of our scene, if we drag shield back in, it'll be as it would normally. This just means that we can hold it in our project panel without it and we can use it in many different scenes. Now on the FPS controller, if we add the game object shield, we'll now get that. So what I can do now is when I run the game, you can run about, do whatever you're doing, and when I press B, you'll notice that the shield comes over, and you'll notice that there will be a sound effect as long as you added an audio source. And then once it actually ended and disappeared, the sound turned off. So if we press B again, we can walk out of it, walk back in, and things like that. And as soon as I spawn one, I can't spawn another until that one has been destroyed. And if you notice that the tile inside this might be a little bit off, it might look a little bit weird, you have to really sort out the tiling of the texture within 3ds Max before you bring it into this. It's not been mapped properly on the inside, whereas it is on the outside. So that's just simply a way to create a bubble shield within Unity and make it spawn, make it appear at your player's position as like maybe a power or a ability to deflect projectiles and things like that. But that was pretty much it. And as ever, if you like the tutorial, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Cheers.